Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome on Dharma podcast. We are back again with Sandeep Balakrishna to continue chronicling the history of the Congress Party, right from its pre-inception, inception, and the journey after that. In the last episode, we reached the year 1919 with Sandeep, and Sandeep chronicled the importance of 1919 by bringing multiple theatres of activity into play which converged in 1919. And in the last episode, he brought to light the particular fascination and the steamy relationship Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi had with the Ali brothers of all the people, and how that fascinating relationship jeopardized India by lending his support to the Khilafat movement, to the extent that he went and drafted a manifesto exhorting Indians on how to support the Khilafat movement, and that perhaps sowed the seeds of Hindu-Muslim vote bank politics that we are all suffering the brunt of. So we will be talking to Sandeep now from here on, cunningness and the scheming of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and how we continue to play his brand of politics in the years ahead. So thank you all for joining. Sandeep, let's get started. Sandeep, can you now take us through what transpired after Gandhi overtly endorsing the Khilafat movement and going on to draft a manifesto exhorting Indians on how to achieve the Khilafat objectives? What happened next?
Yeah, thanks Parag. Good to be back with you once again, as always, exploring the history of the Congress Party and the central role played by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi ever since he returned to India from South Africa. And like you said, we were on that momentous and highly significant year, 1919, which is also the year in which Mohammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, the infamous Ali brothers duo, they launched something called the Khilafat Committee, which led to what eventually came to be known as the Khilafat movement. And so in the last episode, we closed at a point where Gandhi had struck up a friendship of sorts with the Ali brothers, specifically with the leader, Muhammad Ali, and how he drafted something called a manifesto or a Khilafat manifesto. Remember what I also mentioned in the previous episode, that the Ali brothers and the entire Muslim leadership, the entire community that Muhammad Ali had mobilized in favor of the Khilafat, they were very happy to let Gandhi take the lead of this so-called Khilafat movement or agitation. So let me read out a couple of lines from Gandhi's so-called manifesto in support of Khilafat. Quote, "The power that an individual or a nation forswearing violence can generate is a power that is irresistible. Non-cooperation is therefore the only remedy left open to us. It is the clearest remedy, as it is the most effective when it is free from all violence." Okay, note these lines. It becomes a duty when cooperation means degradation or humiliation or an injury to one's cherished religious sentiment. Okay, England cannot expect a meek submission by us to an unjust usurpation of rights, which to Muslims means a matter of life and death. Nowhere do you see India or Hindus here. The last line, England cannot expect a meek submission by us to an unjust usurpation of rights to which to Muslims means a matter of life and death, it seems. Which is this usurpation of which right of Muslims, which means a matter of life and death? The restoration of the Khalifa in Turkey. Okay. Now, this is what R.C. Majumdar says about this. As regarding the fate of the Khilafat as a matter of life and death to the Muslims, events were soon to prove that it was a rhetoric or a hyperbole. Okay, let's expand on this. Because in less than 5 years after the destruction of the so-called caliphate in Turkey, in less than 5 years, you know what happened? The Muslim population of Turkey itself, they set aside the already, powerless caliph, and they usurped the rights of the same caliph to a far greater degree than the British ever did. And R.C. Majumdar says, as a consequence, not a leaf stirred in the whole Muslim world outside India. You know where this has a parallel, Parag? This has a parallel in 1989 when Mr. Rajiv Gandhi banned the satanic verses authored by Salman Rushdie before any Muslim country did. India was the first country to do this. You see the parallels where they lead to?
Without even having read the book.
Right? So, this is what Majumdar further continues. He says, unless we are prepared to believe that the Muslims of India were the only true followers of the Prophet or the most genuine champions of the cause of Islam, it is difficult to understand or explain the weight they attached to the Khilafat question, except on the theory that it was a phase of a Pan-Islamic movement to which the Indian Muslims looked forward to as the only guarantee against the influence of a Hindu majority with whom fate had linked them in India. Absolute clarity. Right? So this is what Mr. Gandhi was supporting. And it doesn't stop there. Here's the scene. In spite of the hostility to the Caliph, remember, Caliph was hated in that period throughout the Muslim world. Not only just in the Arabian Peninsula, but even as far as in Egypt. Okay, this Caliph was hated. So the Muslim world actually welcomed, when the British and the Allied powers set him aside. So in spite of this kind of hostility towards the Caliph, what explains Mr. Gandhi's obsession with a dead cause? It's a cause which only a section of Indian Muslims supported. So what explains Mr. Gandhi's obsession with it? At the cost of the majority. Yeah. So what explains his obsession with it? One, there are many theories revolving around, why Gandhi supported Khilafat so vociferously, so actively, leading it from the front. One speculative answer is this. Mr. Gandhi saw himself as some kind of an apostle blessed by God himself to bring world peace. This is only speculative answer, and it pretty much tallies in with his, political activism all the way till the partition of India. So he thought, he was convinced that I am some kind of a divine messenger or apostle to bring in, sent to this earth to bring in world peace. And in the Indian context, this is important. In the Indian context, world peace is equal to Hindu-Muslim bhai bhai. Okay.
Actually, world peace equals Hindus take second fiddle.
Hindu-Muslim bhai bhai. This is Gandhi's formulation, his equation. In which case, why didn't any other Congress guys who predated Gandhi have this kind of an illusion? Not regarding Khilafat. Forget Khilafat. None of the guys in the Congress even had this kind of predating Gandhi, had this kind of a illusion of what, they represented. Here's some more stuff from the same manifesto authored by Mr. Gandhi. And Parag, this manifesto, you have to read it completely. It's available in his complete collected works of Mohandas Gandhi in 50 volumes, translated in all Indian languages. So that Gandhi's manifesto reads like a user manual of delusion. Here goes. Those who are holding offices of honor or emoluments ought to give them up. This is Gandhi's prescription, his manifesto. Those who belong to the menial services under government should do likewise. It is a voluntary withdrawal alone that is a test of popular feeling and dissatisfaction. Notice the words. It is a voluntary withdrawal. In which case, how does something become voluntary when another person is asking others to do a voluntary action? Long story short, Gandhi's manifesto, which was followed by ground action, it had single-handedly created the Frankenstein's monster, all thanks to this great Mahatma and his misguided friendship of convenience with the Ali brothers. Eventually, what happened? This is a run-up to the Khilafat movement, and what eventually happened in the long run, including how it panned out, how the so-called Khilafat movement panned out, all sorts of scoundrels were just waiting for this sort of mass leadership, for this sort of who could lead a mass agitation, so that these scoundrels could bake their beans under this large umbrella. It was a kitchen which Gandhi had founded, and I'll narrate that story in a future episode. So even when Gandhi was drumming up support for the so-called Khilafat agitation, his own friends, associates, and seniors in the Congress, one section, they, they repeatedly warned him against this so-called friendship with the Ali brothers. They've used the words serpent in the grass. This kind of language has been used for these guys. But again, Mr. Gandhi, being Mr. Gandhi, he was totally adamant. You see, Parag, obstinacy, stubbornness is the hallmark of a self-righteous man who mistakes himself to be a Mahatma. Remember, Gandhi did not, give the title of Mahatma to himself. According to some accounts, Rabindranath Tagore gave him that title. But if he was such a great Mahatma, he should have dissuaded people from addressing him as a Mahatma.
He willingly took it on.
He took it on. I mean, he reveled in it. He
Reveled
rejoiced.
It went to his head, it went to his head.
This whole sainthood business is very seductive, very, very addictive also. So this is his hallmark, stubbornness. And while the Ali brothers were crystal clear from day one, they were clear that what they were really fighting for was a purely pan-Islamic cause. And it was Gandhi's self-righteousness that made him read freedom struggle into their bigoted cause. Simple, as simple as that. This is exactly like how, what is that? Mera Abdul terrorist nahi hai. Same thing. Are Baba Burhan Wani is going around, killing people, doing his whatever acts of terror, and other people read the message of peace into it. Misguided son of a high school headmaster. Really? This is what Gandhi did.
So actually, we discussed last time.
Huh.
Everything that we're seeing in the last, actually year after year,
Yeah.
is what Gandhi started.
Exactly. The seeds are all right here. Before Gandhi, this was never the case in India. Centuries before Gandhi. Never the case. Now, once again, we turn to Mr. R.C. Majumdar. This is what he says. And I'll read it out. Quote, Gandhi failed to realize that the pan-Islamic idea which inspired the Khilafat question cut at the very root of Indian nationality.
Did he fail to, or did he ignore it?
No, he was deluded.
No, deluded.
He was deluded. So that's the clearest and simplest explanation. What he further says, Majumdar says, is that if the real sympathy of a large section of Indians were bound with a state and society which lay far outside the boundaries of India and had no political connection with it, they could never form a true unit of the Indian nation. Pan-Islamic cause, in this case, the sentiments of Mr. Ali and his gang, they were clearly, way beyond India, outside India. What commonality does Turkey have with India?
I mean, as recently as yesterday, Mehbooba Mufti went...
We'll come to that. Okay. So, and this is beautiful. If 100 million of Muslims are more vitally interested in the fate of Turkey and other Muslim states outside India than they are in the fate of India, they can hardly be regarded as a unit of an Indian nation.
Perfect.
100 million Muslims back then supporting the pan-Islamic so-called, restoration of the Khalifa. By his own admission that the Khilafat question was a vital one for Indian Muslims, Gandhi himself admitted that they formed a separate nation. 1919, 1920, remember?
Yes.
That's the year. Okay. These Muslims were in India, but were not of India. They were in India, but they were not of India. Which comes to, the point you just made about Mufti Mehbooba. What has really changed even after a full century, Parag? In fact, more than a century. This happened in 1920. We are in 2024. Okay? What has really changed? Look at the parallel that is playing out today as we speak. Look at the kind of support that Hamas and Hezbollah are getting from Indian Muslims. This is pretty much, how it, kept panning out. And there is a, reason I'm getting into such an in-depth discussion. Because the so-called Khilafat movement, it not only put Mr. Gandhi on the fast track to political superstardom, but it was also the first instance where he displayed his incurable love for Muslim causes, not only in theory, but more so in devastating practice. At whose cost? Let's not take it at, this is not second-hand information. We have Mr. Gandhi's own words, and I quote, "Such an opportunity for winning over the Muslims and forging the unity of Indian people to fight the British would not come in 100 years, it seems."
So this is how he convinced himself.
It's in the manifesto. This is the picture any sane person would get from, this kind of manifesto and this public posturing and the rest of it. While the Hindus were thinking about India and Indian freedom, Ali brothers and company were thinking about Ummah. Clear distinction, India and Ummah. Who are prioritizing what? Who are fighting for what? Which brings us to several gems of what, notable people in the Muslim community in those days were really thinking about the Khilafat movement at that time. I'll take a random example. There was a respected historian. His name was Mr. I.H. Qureshi, and he clearly admits in his writing that the claim of the Sultan of Turkey as the supreme religious authority of the Muslim world, the Indian Muslims had a reason to feel a strong emotional attachment to a caliph whom they could claim as their own sovereign. And before the First World War, prayers for the Turkish Sultan had already come to be included in the Friday khutbah, which is a sermon, in the mosques of India, the famous Friday prayers. Okay, that. Let this sink in, Parag. Even before the Sultan was deposed, they were giving prayers for, keeping the sovereignty of the Turkish caliph intact. Let it sink in, because the caliph in Turkey and not the British government, colonial British government, and not even an independent government of India ruled by Indians, was their sovereign. If this was the real Muslim sentiment, Mr. Gandhi and some of his camp followers in the Congress, they continued to nurture their pet hallucination about the Ali brothers. When you survey the career of Mr. Muhammad Ali, which is quite a brilliant guy actually, extraordinary, manipulator, it is clear that he was a master practitioner of the dark art of speaking in a forked tongue. This was Muhammad Ali. And on one side, he had, successfully seduced Mr. Gandhi. And on the other side, he was simultaneously writing for different papers, which I mentioned in the previous episode. Now, here is an article that he wrote in his paper named Comrade. The title of this article is "The Communal Patriot." I'll read out a couple of lines from it. Quote, "People talk sometimes of the need of the Muslims joining hands with the Hindus because some incidents in the contemporary history have not been exactly to their liking. Soft-headed and some self-advertising folk among the Muslims have gone about proclaiming that the Muslims should join the Congress. We are simply amused at this irresponsible fatuity. We realize for the first time that even sane and level-headed men can confuse issues. Have the questions that really divide the two communities lost their force and meaning?" I'll repeat that. Have the questions that really divide the two communities lost their force and meaning? If not, then the problem remains exactly where it was at any time in recent Indian history. So the divide is permanent. It is irreconcilable. Further, Muhammad Ali writes that boards of arbitration, peace syndicates, and solemn pacts about cows cannot solve it. There you go. Straight from the horse's mouth about cow slaughter. Yet, this was the same Muhammad Ali who saw a bakra, cow, horse, now bakra. This was the same Muhammad Ali who saw a perfect bakra in Gandhi and immediately agreed to join hands with him so that the Ali brothers could get support for their so-called Khilafat movements. And here is Majumdar's analysis. Beautiful. This shows how easily Muhammad Ali could change his views deliberately formed on the basis of facts which remained unaltered. So you twist the fact. Indian journalists, this is what they do, seculars. Right?
Twisted, slanted.
Yeah. on the basis of the same facts which remain unaltered. For his pact with the Hindu leaders during the Khilafat movement is a direct negation of all that he wrote in his article in that paper, comrade. So this is Mr. Muhammad Ali. And at this distance in time, not too many people know of a hijrat that had occurred in India at that time. This hijrah or hijrat holds a special place in the Muslim community because hijrat is literally the flight of the Prophet from Mecca to Medina, where he could establish a base and marshal forces and equip himself with strength before he finally conquered Mecca. So this episode is known as Hijrah or Hijrat. So a similar Hijrah or Hijrat occurred around the same time as the so-called Khilafat movement. In August 1920, as part of this run-up to this Khilafat movement, there was a planned mass migration of Muslims hailing from various parts of India into Afghanistan. This planned migration started in Sindh, which is now in Pakistan, and then it gradually spread all the way to something called the Northwestern Frontier Province, which is completely a part of Pakistan and Afghanistan now. And back then it was estimated that in August 1920, nearly 18,000 Muslims from various parts of India marched all the way up to Afghanistan. But then, because the British were ruling with such an iron hand, they said, nothing of your mischief will work here, just, get back to your homes. So there was a clash which occurred, with in the border of Afghanistan with some British soldiers and things like that. So you see how these things are slowly building up. Look at all the fronts on which Mr. Muhammad Ali is playing. Congress on one side, Gandhi on one side, writing elaborate articles about the British atrocity and the need for the unity of Muslims in his newspapers, and then organizing these mass migrations of mujahids to Afghanistan. See at what all levels this guy is playing this game, Muhammad Ali. Yet when all this was happening, in spite of all this, Mr. Gandhi and his gang in the Congress, they were blissfully unaware of the real intent of the Ali brothers. And this is what Mr. Majumdar says, and I quote him: Gandhi and the Hindu leaders failed to realize that the Khilafat was really inspired by the Pan-Islamic movement, and the policy of the Hindu-Muslim entente or the pact was merely an ingenious device on the part of the Muslim leaders to secure help against British imperialism, which they then regarded as the greatest enemy of Islam. They were very clear from day one, Parag. They were very clear. Mr. Gandhi, he very easily fell into this trap. He was very convinced that I'm this master statesman and this shrewd political player and all that, but he was completely mistaken. I mean, he was so wrong, that it defies belief. So he fell into the trap of Muhammad Ali, and he was too eager to arrive at some kind of a political pact or settlement with the Muslim community at any cost. So he jumped in at what he thought was a highly unique opportunity for achieving that elusive mirage of this Hindu-Muslim unity. And they say that if wishes were horses, even pigs could fly or something. No, or there's another proverb that wish is a father of thought. So, so with these mass of delusions, Mr. Gandhi interpreted the attitude and the overtures and the so-called friendship offered by Mr. Muhammad Ali in his own way, in his own hallucinatory way, without even scratching the surface. This is incredible when we think about it today. He didn't even critically examine the intent behind why such a fanatic and a bigoted man like Muhammad Ali, who never hid his intention, that his allegiance was primarily for the Pan-Islamic cause. why Gandhi did not use his critical thinking faculties. Yes, you had a question.
No, the lament, I think it's more lament than a question, and not to absolve Gandhi, that in spite of so many other stalwarts who gave impetus to the Congress movement, how they allowed Gandhi to run amok within the party and also did not bring in their wisdom to bearing where Gandhi failed to see if they could have, at least seen through it and stalled, some of it would have been, we would have been perhaps different.
That I will explain in the episode in which I sum up the full legacy of Mr. Gandhi and his leadership, because it requires a lot of elaboration. So, without using his critical thinking, he was too eager, he was too desperate, and he had convinced himself that the Ali brothers were out of the goodness of their heart and their patriotic feeling towards India, they had supported the Congress and Mr. Gandhi. So, talking about this, Mr. Majumdar says about Gandhi that he had fallen into the trap of the Ali brothers, quote, without looking back at the antecedents of the Muslim community in general and of the Ali brothers in particular, so far as Pan-Islamism was concerned. And what happened next, we look at in the next episode.
So Sandeep, in his usual fashion, took us through the journey after 1920, particularly in the context of Gandhi's support to the Khilafat movement, and how Gandhi repeatedly failed to use critical thinking on the deception and the various moves that were unleashed by the Ali brothers. We shall continue this conversation with Sandeep in the next episode. So thank you all for joining us. So we look forward to you staying with us through the series on chronicling the history of the Congress Party, and particularly exposing the so-called legacy of Mohandas Gandhi. So do continue watching Dharma podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and spread the word so that this content, this research reaches a larger audience. And thank you for your support always.